Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Today I'm going to start off by showing you a very interesting instrument. This is called a Maui Zafoon. Try pronouncing it, a Maui Zafoon. It is a Hawaiian instrument. It's sometimes called a Hawaiian saxophone. It's made out of bamboo, but it's reasonably thick bamboo. It has a cap, and I say saxophone because it does have a saxophone-like mouthpiece that's carved into the instrument and a cap that protects the reed, which I'll now take off. Now you see it. This cap is all hand done. It's actually quite nicely done. It's got a beautiful finish to it. It's kind of a dark brown. And I need to show it to you because it is an instrument that is not, it's not really rare.
Towards you more.
Toward me more.
Right there.
Okay. Here it is, toward me more. Okay, I'm getting instructions from the expert here. And something's happened and I've got a green screen.
Oh, it's right in the middle, Pat.
Huh? Oh, okay. All right, I didn't even see that. Sorry about that. This is the back, this is the front of the instrument. And you have your tone holes in the front, right here. Good, I'm glad for this shot because it shows the holes. They have a little, they're like indented inside the instrument and they're stained, but they've left a little area around each tone hole that is not stained. And this is what it looks like. Now on the back of the instrument, I want to show you this. This is a typical saxophone mouthpiece, but the difference is that the mouthpiece is carved into the instrument. In order to take, most mouthpieces are separate and they attach to the instrument. This is carved in. So in order to get the reed off, I have to unscrew this, loosen it up, and take the reed out. And what you can see in the inside is the mouthpiece itself. Okay, it's been carved in. These mouthpieces that they carve into the instruments, they're hard to do. I cannot get this, this is the ligature, what you screw a reed on into the instrument. If I had a saxophone or a clarinet here, I could show you the ligature comes off, the mouthpiece comes off, and when I put the reed on, I put the ligature on, and then I screw it in so that the reed doesn't slip and it maintains where it's supposed to be, and you can get the tone. But there's no adjustment here. I cannot take the ligature off. If I do, it'd be very, very hard to get it back on. It's meant to be here, so it's meant to be there forever, I think. So what I would have to do, and this is a berry reed. This is not a typical reed because this instrument does not get played very often. It is a plastic reed. There are disadvantages and advantages to plastic reeds. The disadvantage, let me put it here, the disadvantage is the fact they're very hard to play. The advantage is they don't crack like a normal cane reed does, and so therefore you're not continually replacing reeds. But since I don't use this instrument very much, it's all right for me to use this. So I'm going to, this may be hard for you to see, I'm going to slip this in if I can get it to go in. I'm going to loosen up the ligature. This is something I have to do that you can't actually see me do it because I can't do it from the back side so you can see it. I don't know if I can do that successfully or not. I unscrew the ligature. I press it so that the reed can slip right in, which is good, it's doing that. I get it to the position where I want it to be exactly. And I do mean exactly, because if you let the reed stick out a little, it makes it harder to play. If you let the reed go a little bit under, it can also be hard to play. And I screw the ligature tight, but not too tight. I have 2 screws in this ligature. I've got to get them both down. And then what I would do with an instrument like a saxophone or a clarinet, I would loosen this up a little bit. Just a little bit, not a lot, but that gives it a chance to vibrate more. Plastic reeds, I wouldn't teach a person using a plastic reed, but I have performed with a plastic reed because I know when I put it in my mouth, it's going to play. The tone may not be quite as good, but when I put it in, excuse me, in my mouth, it is going to play. And the other thing about them is the fact that you don't have to soak them and keep them wet. Most of these cane reeds that we use, they only have a life of about 25 performances. They don't last forever. And so what you have to do is you have to make sure that the reed is moist and wet enough so when you put it in your mouth it'll play, otherwise it'll just squeak. Well, there's no waiting, because with a plastic reed you just put it in your mouth and it plays, and that's one of the advantages of it. But it is very hard on your lips to do that. So this is a saxophone-like instrument made out of bamboo, made in Hawaii, and they're not rare, they're still making them, but I've never met anyone else that has one. And you have your keyholes, a little like a recorder. There is a thumb hole in the back that you can see. This is the symbol of the company that makes it, and it's called the Maui Zafoon. And on the front, the tone holes, they're a little bit odd. I think what you would get, it's almost like a recorder in one way. You've got your left hand on top with 3 fingers, and I'm covering tone holes with those fingers. And then you would have right here. And then on the bottom you have the 4 fingers and the tone holes that you cover with your right hand. Although to you it's going to look left, it's going to reverse, but that's it. And then there is one hole on the top, which is right here. And I think that acts as a labium, like you have in a recorder. And in the back, there is a thumb hole. So in a way, it's a lot like a recorder with a kind of saxophone mouthpiece on top. And the magic of it is that it actually does play. But it's not easy to play, and I don't play it very often, but it does work. I find that a lot of these instruments from the Caribbean or from Hawaii, they have the carved-in mouthpiece, so you don't have a separate mouthpiece. It's probably a little easier to make because they don't have to make a mouthpiece that's fitted to the instrument to get it to work. It's just there because it's there. And so it seems like it's handy, but there's no flexibility. With mouthpieces, you can twist them and turn them so they can be at a little different angle if you like it that way. And it's easier to put on the reeds because you can take the mouthpiece off, hold it in your hand and work with it, and then put it back on. And you can't do that because the mouthpiece is attached to the instrument. It's been said that all you have to do is stick it in your pocket. And when you stick it in your pocket, you can take it anywhere and play it, like if you're on a hike and so forth. I think that's probably too big for a pocket. I wouldn't want to damage it. And there it is, a Maui Zafoon saxophone, Hawaiian saxophone, made in Hawaii. And there it is. I'll turn it around. Mouthpiece with the ligatures. 2. This is the ligature, but it has 2 screws on it to tighten up as you want to. And then the labium would be very, very close to the mouthpiece, but not terribly close to your mouth, close to the mouthpiece, specially designed, and it really does work. I know when I was collecting saxophones, I have about 7 saxophones. Some of them are rare. This is one that's unusual. And I just, when I saw it, I says, I gotta have one of those. So of course I added it to my collection. And as I say, it does play, but it's not easy to play. So, and the cap, you always, when you have a woodwind, have a cap. The cap protects the reed. And so this is handmade, also bamboo, and you just slip it carefully, and I do mean carefully, over the mouthpiece, and the mouthpiece is perfectly safe. I've never had any reed get scratched on the Zaffoon, but you do have to be careful. You can't just jam them in. I've seen students that jam caps on mouthpieces and they end up in trouble because they do some damage. And instruments are easily damaged. So that is the Maui Zaffoon. Now, I'm going to go back to a song that I played 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I want to show you 2 or 3 ways of writing it. So I'm going to, first of all, move my music stand. This is a song, and it's a waltz. And I've done it before, but I didn't do it the last segment because I didn't want to just, kind of overuse it. But there are 2 ways of playing it. So when we get that in, I'll show you exactly how this works. If this is a waltz, thank you. This is a waltz. Whoops, wrong side. Let me pull that over. Okay, because I'll be using the other side after I play it. I'll be switching. But anyway, here's your key signature. Key signature is G, 1 sharp. I write a lot in G sharp and F sharp. There's your 3/4 waltz tempo, treble clef. This is a half note is worth 2 beats, a quarter note is worth 1 beat, and this is the whole waltz. And I'm going to play it, then I'm going to show you another way that it can be written, and you get exactly the same song. But the reason I'm doing it is that I need to show you how you write music and how you can write so many different ways to get what you want. So let me play this first. Now, if we look at the time, you may recognize that I've played it before. If we look at the time, 2 beats in 1 making 3, a whole note making 3, and I want to show you this is a hold sign where you play that, you don't tongue that note. You tongue this note, the beginning of where the hold is, and you just hold the note for 1 beat longer because of that hold sign. You don't tongue that. This would be your phrase marks, and usually they're 4 measures long, although they don't have to be. And here's your breath mark, and this is a hold. When you're holding that note, you tongue that first note of that hold, and you're holding it for 3 measures. This is why you need to do sustaining notes and holding tones, even though they're kind of a pain, is the fact you need to build up your lungs to be able to play 3 measures and just hold the note. You do not tongue this one, you do not tongue this one. So it's like you tongue that and hold it, since it's 3 beats to a measure, for 9 beats. Then you take a breath. And here's the phrase mark. Here's another phrase mark going from this note, from here and down here to the next line down. This is a hold. You hold that for 3 beats, and then you hold this for another beat, so it's like you're playing it for 4 beats. Tongue these 2, tongue these. These phrase marks don't have anything to do with tonguing. They're just there. It's like a group of notes that's there, kind of forming a statement on its own. You do tongue these. When you get here, there's a retard. You start slowing down. What I've done is I've taken a few measures toward the end and slowed them down. I could write a repeat sign, but I don't need to. It actually makes more sense if I don't, and just hold that out. Here's a retard sign, and look at this. Hold, 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 hold. 3, 6, 9, and 11, because I've got a 1 measure, a 1 beat rest on the end. So therefore, you're not holding it all the way through. You're holding it almost a hold. There's 1, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. If I held it for the 3 beats, then it would be 12 beats that you hold it for. Now, and the whole just goes from one note to another note to another note. So you're holding all that time. And since you're retarding, you're playing it slower. Well, what if I want to write this in a different time signature, a little bit different time signature? If we look at this part right here, this is going to be exactly the same song, but we're going to write it in a different kind of way. We're going to use eighth notes instead of quarter notes. So it's going to be in 6/8 time. 6/8 time is very much like 3/4 time. It's waltz tempo. But instead of a quarter note getting a beat, a quarter note gets 2 beats, and an eighth note gets 1 beat. How do I know that? I've written down here 8. 6/8. So there's going to be 6 beats to a measure, and 1 beat, the eighth note, is going to be worth 1 beat. So all of these notes here, they're all eighth notes. They're worth 1 beat each instead of 1/4. You see, normally in 3/4 time, an eighth note would be half a beat. But because I have the 8 down here standing for eighth note, all of those eighth notes are worth 1 beat. So I would count it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the first measure. 1, 2, because an eighth note has a beat, so the quarter note has 2 beats. Here's 1 beat, 3. And then this dotted quarter is actually 3 beats. Now, how does that get to be 3 beats? Well, because an eighth note is worth 1 beat, then this quarter note is worth 2 beats. And then I want an extra beat, so I put a dot beside it, because that dot means it's worth half as much as the original note, so it's worth another eighth note. So here you have 3 beats, quarter, a dotted quarter ends up by being 3 beats, and then I've got it held over to the first beat of the next measure. So you don't even tongue that. So you actually are counting 4 beats for this. Now you only count it 1, 2, 3, 1. You don't count 4 because it starts another measure. This starts another measure. So let me review this, because timing can get tricky and reading music can get tricky. You have to know what all the symbols mean. And the time signature is critical because it tells you how many beats there are in a measure and what each beat is worth. So here's 2 beats, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you hold it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you hold it again to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are 2 notes here that are a dotted quarter, but it's equivalent. A dotted quarter is equivalent to 3 beats, because the quarter note is equivalent to 2 eighth notes, and an eighth note has 1 beat. So if you have a quarter note, you get 2 beats out of that, and then the dot gives you an extra beat. So a dotted quarter is 3 beats instead of just being 1 beat, a little bit longer like you'd have in 3/4 time. And so when I get through writing all of this, I have exactly the same song as I had before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's the pattern for the entire song. When I play it, and I will play it, you don't see any difference in terms of the time or in terms of the sound of the song. It's exactly the same song, but I've written it in a different time signature for both, either 3/4 or 6/8, which is also waltz tempo. And when you get through with it, you count it a little differently, but it's exactly the same song. And you also have a lot less measures in here than you would in the first one, because I do, if I'm playing a fast waltz and it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, I actually can get more notes in a measure. If I switch to 6/8, it's still 1, 2, 3, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a measure, rather than 1, 2, 3 to a measure measure, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the measures are twice as long, but there are fewer of them. Which is better? Well, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. It just depends upon what you like to read, what's easier to read for you. But most music, if it's faster music, they would rather use 6/8 than use 3/4. If I was conducting this, the symbol for conducting, it's going to look reversed to you, but this is going to be 1, 2, 3. You know, 1, 2, 3. Well, if I'm playing a waltz or somebody's playing a waltz and it's a fast waltz, because many of them are, you're not going to want to see this. How are you going to read that? So what they do is they either conduct one beat, which is called the downbeat, or 2 beats to the measure. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which is a lot easier to conduct. Or if it's 6/8 time, it would be 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, which is a lot easier to conduct than this business. In terms of, is it easier to read, I think I think maybe for new students, 3/4 time is going to be easier to read than 6/8, because you have to get used to the fact that in this kind of music, an 1/8 note is worth 1 beat, where in the other 3/4 time, a quarter note is worth 1 beat, and an 1/8 note would be half of the quarter. In this, the 1/8 note is worth 1 beat. A quarter is double of that, so the quarter note is actually worth 2 beats. And but when you get used to it, it's nothing to it really. When you get used to it, so let me play this. I'll play this. And it's going to sound exactly like the first one that I played. Now I wanted to show you something in terms of the last note. If I can find, oh, here it is. In terms of the last note, on this side, dotted quarter, dotted quarter, dotted quarter, dotted quarter. You notice this curve is a hold mark. It starts right on that first beat of those 2 measures, and you have to tongue that. But you don't tongue this, and you don't tongue this, and you don't tongue this. You play them all like they were 1 note, and that makes this the hold. And it covers all of those notes. On the other one, on the other side, if we can make a switch, I can pull it over, Rick. You don't have to. I'm keeping him too busy. On the other side, I had dotted half notes. Yeah, good, right here. Dotted half, dotted, wait a minute, I did not a dotted half. This is a whole note, a whole note, a whole note, and a half note with a rest. And this would be 3 beats, 3 beats, 3 beats, 2 beats and 1 rest. And you hold all of that. Here's a hold mark, but I put individual holds on each of the measures. And I didn't do it so much on this side. I just put that 1 hold. So therefore, you get the same amount of music. It's written in a different way. It may be conducted in a different way too, but either way is all right. Either way, you're going to get the same song. Why do I need to tell you all this? Well, you need to know how music is written, because if you're going to play it, if you're going to be in an orchestra, you really need to know how this is conducted and how this is played. And different composers do it in different ways according to what their preference is. I'm going to try to take some time, maybe next time, and discuss with you conducting. What it is, how important it is, what the conductor's responsibility is. He's not just sitting there with a beat. I mean, some may, but if he knows what he's doing and he's a really good conductor, he is actually organizing an entire orchestra, bringing it together, cueing people in when they're supposed to play. That's called cueing, stopping them or slowing them down or softening them, cutting them off, and conducting them, getting them started together on a downbeat. There's a lot to it. There really is a lot to it, but it's kind of fun to do. So I may have one segment that I have just basically on conducting. This is my own conductor's baton. They're made differently. I mean, they're all pretty much the same, but they can be made of different materials and different styles and all of that. So we'll stop it here, and we'll be doing that or something else next week. Please join me then.